Hello teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at a couple of live streams from Chantal. We've got Your Hate for Me Clouds Your Judgment, and where is the other one? Amberlynn, Reid, You Are a Narcissist, Get Help. She did have a third one, Midnight Bacon and Cheese, I think it was called. I listened to it through it at speed while I was doing other things. There didn't seem to be much in it, so I've just left it. And she is currently live, Coffee and Chat I think it's called, so I'll have to see what's in that one later, but as it's already 8:15, I was like, nah, if I'm gonna record, I need to get it recorded. In a surprise to no one, Chantal's been a bit triggered recently. I know, isn't it shocking? I know. So she's at home, she's cooking beef, she's chatting. She said that she turned off comments, she can't handle the constant obsessive hate, and she's trying to take her life in a positive direction, which given all the raging she's about to do is a little shocking. Now, she was preempting the reactions by being like, oh, you can't handle the hate. I don't actually care that she's turned the comments off. I think, I've said before on this channel, that she'd do better just to switch them off, because I think she'd be less triggered if she'd switch them off. But apparently I'm wrong because she's still triggered. But you know, if you can't just turn them off, there's no point raging and raging and raging again. Either you learn to handle them or you choose not to have them. And she's chosen not to have them, and that's absolutely fine. She gets to do that. But she did say, you know, I don't read the comments, so I'll just turn them off. And I was like, okay, I'm with you so far, because she says I barely ever go in, even though we've seen her triggered by them. And then she's like, and then these people can F off. And I'm like, so you do watch them then? That was a mixed message. I'm fine with her turning them off for whatever reason, but for her to say, I don't read them, so I don't need them, so I'm off, but all these people can go F themselves because I'm triggered because I don't read them, doesn't make entire sense. So she does mention, I think it might be a comment from somewhere, I guess, before she turned them off, or it might be on a community post or something, but she's actually got a fair amount on her community tab today. So what I'm going to do, but I'll talk about them, but let's go through the community tabs before we move on with this react, shall we? So the first post was just saying, look, I'm turning off comments for now, basically rehashing what she just said. I don't have to worry about what miserable people have to say. Same obsessed weirdos every time. Bye-bye. Beezing is a privilege. And if you weren't with me at my toughest times on here, then you don't deserve to be with us. Ma'am, you know what a privilege is? A privilege is having people hand you money to behave the way you're behaving. That is the privilege here, not us watching, but you getting paid to do this, to do anything online. It's a privilege. So when you're sitting here cussing people out, remember they paid for the privilege. We then go on to the second community tab, which she posted a picture of, but I can't press the read more because it's a picture. So I'm not sure what else she said to her, but this is the one that she was discussing initially. And it's victim shame as a gross period. Teach your kids better. She always goes after people's kids, doesn't she? Like, if you're a mother, you should be held to a higher power than the rest of us trolls. And the comment, I cannot believe how much money this woman makes exploiting her psychotic behavior. I'm a real survivor. I left with my kids and I've been working 50+ hours a week. I rent a room, can't afford food for my children. If you want to actually help someone who helped themselves first. I wish someone would throw money at me. Maybe then I could get my cars fixed and buy my kids some new shoes. This is infuriating. Hell, do you want my PayPal? I could use some help, for fuck's sake. And Foodie had something to say about that. She said, what is a real survivor? A real survivor would never say that to another person. Just because your situation is bad, don't downplay someone else's, and don't worry about how much I make. Start a channel if there's a read more. I'm guessing she's like, if you want super chats, go make your own audience, blah, 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 blah. Now, as much as Foodie is very unlikable, she has somewhat of a point, but the way she's stating it, I don't really agree with. So, or rather, I understand where this other lady's coming from. It's maybe a better way to say that. Now, this other commenter, she's explained some of her situation. Foodie does not have to be responsible for this other person's situation. And it was a bit weird that she was like, oh, you want my PayPal? I could use the help. Like, she's very angry that Foodie is getting money for what Foodie gets money for. And yeah, there's sometimes you look at the universe and you go, really? When it comes to how much money she tends to make for what she does, but those are the breaks and that's how it worked out, right? So I don't necessarily agree with the word real here, because even though these two women, Foodie and this other woman, appear to have treated this very, very differently, they both had real things happen, right? I also don't really agree with kind of saying one is better and one is worse, but I do think there is a difference in their situations. You might have a lot of cuts in this because I'm trying to word this correctly and it's proving to be a little difficult. I've had to restart a few times. I think they were both in real situations. I think, regardless of how Chantal comports herself online, that Chantal had some things happen to her. I also think that abusive situations, while they have traits that are recognizable by, say, people outside that are trying to help these people, you cannot live someone else's experience. Maybe that's the best way I can maybe phrase that. So I'm not completely dismissing that. However, I think I'm having an issue here with the word survivor. Now, in a technical sense, both of them came out of this alive. And so you can apply it to Foodie. But I don't feel like what she went through here was the same. And here's the problem with how Foodie has presented everything. And she has said, if not in the last few streams, but in a recent stream that I remember, she was saying that basically people aren't treating this seriously enough. Domestic abuse is serious. Maybe I didn't treat mine seriously. And she has said that. Unfortunately, I can't remember which stream she said it in. But that's the key issue here, I think, is how Foodie has reacted to it. Not in the oscillating between do I love him, do I not, this is hard emotionally, but how she's chosen to act since all this went down. So if you imagine that you are this commenter and that she watches Foodie and that she has been through something that you could, if not call equal, then call comparable in terms of the mental struggle it would be to walk out of that relationship, yeah? And it seems like this woman has an ongoing struggle with her money, with, you know, keeping food on the table and all of those things that can be an issue if you manage to get out of that kind of situation. Foodie did not go through that. Doesn't make Foodie better, doesn't make her worse, does make her different. I don't see at any point that Foodie had to fight for her survival in this relationship, because Foodie retained a lot of power in her position. She retained financial control. Even if she was throwing money at him, it was her money to throw. She also, with the exception of the one night where she said he hid her keys, has always had transport, has always had her ability to walk out. And she did walk out on several occasions, and it didn't always end well, that time when she said he was following her down the street, but she's always had the ability to do that if she needed to. So here you've got someone who claimed to be in a similarly abusive situation who did not have that power, who struggled, it seemed, a lot harder in the very practical senses, and had a lot more connecting her to her abuser because they had children together, and obviously Foodie didn't have that as an issue. She didn't have anything connecting her to Nada except her own brain. So you get someone commenting who watches Foodie disregard the opportunity she has to get mental help, to get a therapist, to get whatever, who disregards the opportunities she had to leave, and then rages online because she's not getting the level of sympathy and understanding that she thinks she deserves for that. Because Foodie very much presents herself as, I am a victim and I am owed a good response. I am owed understanding. I am owed sympathy. And she's not a sympathetic person because of the way she has used this event and continues to use it. She waltzes in and out of her victimhood whenever she's feeling kind of vindictive. And she keeps it to throw back at people when she needs to, and to rage at them. And how dare you talk to me this way? How dare you say these things when I am a victim here? And Yes, she may be a victim, but the only thing she's actually fought for in this relationship is the ability to go back, to circumvent any barrier that would get her back with him. And so when we say survive, it's a very different feeling because she hasn't put the same amount of effort into staying away as she did about going back. Now, her answer to that would be, well, I loved him, and, you know, people go back all the time, and I wanted to be with him, so I said whatever I needed to say to get the charges dismissed, and that was that. And I understand, on an intrinsic level, I don't understand, but in a basic, I understand the words that have just come out of your mouth. Processing, I understand what she said, but that doesn't actually excuse anything. Well, my feelings were this at the time, so this thing I did is you have to excuse it. No. And neither does this person in this comment who's also survived something terrible. So is real the right word? Maybe not. But there is a difference here, and Foodie refuses to acknowledge it. I was going to go through the rest of the community posts, but I think before I do, I'll maybe finish on this video because it directly related to what she was saying. So Foodie's making the point that basically people, and she might mean her general audience, she might mean reactors, I'm not quite sure, generally people, I suppose, are willing to sympathize with abusive behavior because they hate her. I think that's actually sometimes true. Maybe not particularly, oh, I sympathize with abuse, but there are people out there that will just take whatever the opposite of Foodie is because it's Foodie. Yeah? And I think that is true. However, I don't think that can be applied to this comment. And generally, when she starts with a point, she then throws it out to her general anger and the things that she's annoyed about across the world. But she started with this comment, and I don't think this comment did that. She asked the question, how is her relationship weird? Because, you know, women are in abusive relationships all the time, and they go back and they go back. And, you know, everyone does that, which is usually her defense for most things she does. She's like, no, everyone does this, and therefore it's justified. I think it's weird that she claims to recognize all the things she claims, and she still engages with him. I can make guesses psychologically as to why, which is why we keep saying, go to therapy, my dude, because without the mic drop, I win moment, she can't let it go. But it is weird to say you are so self-aware, you have done the reflection, you have come to this conclusion, but you will still, again and again and again, communicate with him through the medium of YouTube. I'm not going to say she's communicating with him behind the scenes because I don't have her phone. We can tell you what past behavior was, we can't tell you necessarily what she's doing in this second, but this counts. Social media, doing videos, insulting them, putting it up on the community tab. It all counts. And as I say that, we're going to go back to the community because she had 2 posts on the community tab after, specifically about Didi and Nada, or as she says, comb over queen and green peen of Lachine. And, you know, once more, she swears they're going to be in cuffs. I'll put it up on the screen so you can read it if you want to. She calls them boring simps. She calls them more names. And tells them to frig off, and then has another post. Well, actually, no, that post would have been before, I think. But anyway, just insulting and insulting them. Because despite the fact that she's seriously sitting there going, keep my name out of your mouth, she won't shut up about it. Because she gets to tell her real and raw experience, you guys. But they don't get to speak on her at all, even when she's insulting them. Which isn't really how that works. If she wants them to keep her name out of their mouths, she's got to do the same, regardless of what she went through. So Foodie then lectures us on how every abusive relationship works. And, you know, women do this and women do that, and abusive relationships work like this, while also berating us about the fact that abusive relationships are all different and we can't possibly know. I feel like she needs to pick a lane there. Conversation moves on to money. She says, I have more money this month than ever. And then I'm like, okay, good. So you can afford therapy. It's not a money issue and your other overdue financial responsibilities. And reminds us that new visas will replace us all. She further tells us that you're not living my life through my lens. No, I'm not. But I am viewing your life, which you choose to make public and earn money from, through my own lens, which is kind of the point. This is the trade-off when you make something public. When people can see it on a platform, then we get to judge it through our own lenses. We get to watch it. We get to have our own thoughts based on our own feelings and our own experiences. That is what being public means. And you get well compensated for being public. So you're going to have to make a choice. Either you get to have absolutely no response and be private and happy, or you get to have it online, get paid a lot, and then you have to deal with it. She says she can talk about what she wants. I'm not disrespecting or attacking anyone. I wonder if Dee would agree with that. Looking at those community posts, thinking about how many hours she's gone off about them. She then tries to turn this into a conversation about people shaming her about her weight. I am sure there are people who shame her for her weight. I'm not about to sit here and pretend otherwise. But I think, particularly in the last year or so, there's been a lot more to react to than her weight. She said she weighed in and people responded. And I'm like, I didn't even know she'd weighed in. I'm a bad reactor. Clearly, I was like, what? She weighed in? Oh, I just didn't care. She was like, get over it. I was like, I was never under it. Thank God. Go talk to your 22-year-old. She said, who cares? I'm like, I officially don't. Get a job and a hobby. I have both. Thank you. Go to rehab. No need, but feel free to take your own advice as you sit there sucking on your vape pen and not taking your medications. She says, I'm pretty, I make good money doing whatever I want to do, and you're jealous. And that's what it comes down to. We are all jealous. Here's the thing about that. I definitely make a lot less money than Foodie. Yeah? Outright, with my full-time job and YouTube, and you add everything together, I still make significantly less than Foodie, yeah? And I'm sure, and because I've done this, where you just sit and think, and you look at just the sheer numbers when it comes to how much she makes, and I've just thought, wow, could you imagine just getting that much money? Like just having it delivered to you from YouTube, the things I could achieve, the things you could achieve, the things you could put it towards in your life. Kind of like how people daydream about winning the lottery. Yeah? And I'm not going to sit and deny ever doing that, because I have. When she says, oh, I made $20,000 a couple of months, and I'm like, ooh, $20,000. Imagine what I could have done with that. That, I think, is pretty normal when you're watching this train wreck and just going, really? But if some magical force were to come to me and say, poof, you get to have Chantal's money, but you need to live Chantal's life. Nuh-uh. Absolutely not. There is nothing to be jealous of there. Chantal's life is a trap of her own design. She flings out what she thinks is a very cutting insult, which is, you stop talking about me and your channel will tank. Yeah, that's very true. I'm not disagreeing. If I have a channel designed around talking about Foodie Beauty and Foodie Beauty stops talking, then my channel will go away. That's not the insult you think it is. Those are just the facts of YouTube. If you build an audience towards a certain thing and then the thing goes, it's very hard to keep the audience. You have to rebuild an audience in a different way. She talks a little bit to people's response to the 22-year-old and says that dating a 22-year-old does not make her a predator. She is right, it doesn't make her a predator, but it still feels gross, and that's maybe a me issue, and I'm fine with it being a me issue, but that is how I feel. She also at some point talks about her medication. She says she's not taking them, and she went on them, and then she stopped again. And she doesn't know if she feels better on or off them. And it's no wonder she doesn't know, because if you're not taking them consistently, there's no way to know. Because the drugs can never do what the drugs are designed to do. And it's entirely possible that if she were taking them the way she's supposed to, that she would feel a difference. And it's entirely possible if she were taking them the way she was supposed to, she could go back to a doctor and say, look, these side effects are happening and I don't love them. Can we discuss a different medication? But she's never consistent enough to be able to say that, because you can't go back to a doctor and say, this thing that you prescribed me that I'm not taking the way you prescribed me doesn't work. because then they'll just say, well, okay, have you tried doing what I told you to do? And it's a much harder conversation, yeah? She says off them, she feels less numb, and she makes it sound like it's a good thing, which I suppose it is in a general sense, but she always claims to be chasing that numb feeling. That's why she takes the edibles in large amounts. So I was a little confused by how her attitude towards that seems to have changed. And she said going on and off is the worst. She also says she didn't feel, she knows she has depression, she has anxiety, but she didn't feel that way in Cuba. I'm surprised she had any time in Cuba to feel anything but rage and drunk. But situational depression is the thing. And we have long suspected that the situation she chooses to live in worsens her emotional state. And that's a very common trigger. And sometimes it's a chicken and egg situation. I've said before, like, if my apartment starts getting really messy or dirty, usually I'm in a bad headspace. But also, if I feel myself just wobbling a little bit and like I might be hitting a bit of an ebb, one of the things I can do is clean up my apartment, because having a fresh environment sometimes helps that. So she is in control of that. If it's situational, I'm not saying she shouldn't get help, because when it comes to depression, depression feels like depression. And if you're already depressed, doing the things you need to do to get out of depression can be hard. But situation is something she chooses to be in. And so she needs to choose to change it. She says that she took them properly for a long time. And I was just like, really? I don't remember that time. I remember when she was on them and she kept setting alarms and turning her alarms off and telling us she had run out and needed to get her script filled. And it didn't seem like she was taking them the way she should. I'm sure that's been a conversation point before. We then move on to ALR, you are a narcissist, get help. Oh, before we get there, let me just finish up the community posts for you. She only had a couple. The last two that were on her community were just insulting people, basically. There was a comment that I'll put up that seemed to be pearl clutching for the sake of pearl clutching, if I'm completely honest. No offense to the person who left it. But just saying, you know, will somebody please think of the Pete's? And I'm like, Pete's is capable of setting that boundary, and we have seen him speak up before. Yes, he doesn't speak up very well when he's not comfortable, but this having men in and out, like they have spoken, and he said, like, he stays in his room. He may not be comfortable conversing with these people, but he seems to be fine about it, and he's a big boy. He can talk about that if he needs to. And the second one was a shot at Charlie Gold because Foodie doesn't seem to know how math works. That's basically all that was. But the real star of the show here is going to be Amberlynn's community post that she wrote about Foodie. And oh, I swear to God, both of them. But let's look at the community post first. I do not insult people, or try not to at least, so that's not what I'm going to be doing. Chantal, if you think I'm gaslighting you, I'm sorry. I think she's gaslighting her, but it's not really important. If I hurt you, I'm sorry. Those things were not my intention. You preach so much about hate online, how it affects you, how people call you a liar even though you aren't, etc. Now you're going to do the same to me even though you know who I am as a person offline more than any of these haters of ours do. And I've only ever been kind to you, stood by you, and respected you. Even after you made fun of me years ago using scooters, she did do that. I still supported you. It was odd. I'm not going to continue this online because honestly, this wasn't the point, even though a large portion of people think that it was my goal. It was 100% her goal. We'll talk about it. I'll still continue to support you because that's the kind of person I am. I see you there, Amber. But I'll no longer be speaking about this online. How noble of you. If you want to talk about it, you can contact me in private. Absolutely no chance of that happening, and she knows it. So I find Amberlynn's move of going into Nada's chat to be entirely calculated, right? And we talked about this, I think, in my last react. It just was, because there was no losing for Amber. If Chantal was fine about it, then she could take props with, you know, it was difficult for me to do, but I'm following the advice of my therapist, and aren't you proud of me, you guys, and support me in this because I'm taking control of my mental health, which is kind of the defense she's using. or it was going to cause massive drama online because Foodie is Foodie and she's very easily triggerable, and she was going to get more views and more people talking about her. There was no way for her to lose once she'd done it because her aim was nothing to do with any of the people involved. It was just to get views and attention. So she could either have a reason to berate her own audience again, or she could get support for doing all the right things and being a good girl with her therapist. And Chantal actually makes that point. And so here's the thing, I agree with some of the things that Chantal says here, but you just can't. You cannot get through this video without just laughing because it's so lacking in awareness. I just made a list. I couldn't even, okay. So a couple of things I agree with, yeah? Chantal starts her live to tell Amberlynn off. And it's not going to be a bullying session, you guys, but starts her live. And Amberlynn is in the chat because of course she is. Yeah, and just defending herself, nothing to do with you, my therapist and my mental health. So Chantal says, this is what narcs do. You need to watch a video, not get diagnosed, mind you. You need to go watch the video because Chantal has done that and Chantal is now an expert. Everything that Chantal says in this video can very easily be applied to herself. Yeah, and should be applied to herself. And if I were a diagnosing person, which I am absolutely not, her inability to recognize that while claiming to be so self-reflective would be indicative of something. But the first point she makes is that Amberlynn could have done this privately, and she absolutely could have. If she felt that bad, she did not have to go into Nada's chat at whatever time in the morning it was and say anything. She did it because she knew it would cause waves. She could have messaged Nada privately and that could have been the end to it if she'd really wanted it done privately. She didn't. She wanted the spectacle that she knew it would turn out to be. And that was the only reason to do it publicly. So there we go. Now, obviously this is Chantal talking about Amberlynn, but if we play a game and we just change the wording on one thing very slightly, let's see who it would apply to, shall we? So we've got, I don't believe a single word this woman says. Grow up, you're 30. We could change that to 38. She's self-absorbed. She's pathological. You need help. And also she knows I do too, but never mind that. You need to stop gaslighting. She probably doesn't realize she's a narc. Every attention is fuel. Your videos are always the same thing. And my live streams are too, but your videos are always the same thing. You're a narcissist. It takes one to know one, right? I know she was talking about Amberlynn and Nada, but come on, Foodie. Look in the fucking mirror. Come on. If you're going to gift us with this, come on. Willing to ruin relationships with people for content? You don't have many friendships, do you? You're not edgy with your name and your filter is dumb. And her defense for not doing this privately, because people say, well, if it's a private matter, why aren't you doing it privately? She said, this is not a private matter anymore. She did it publicly, so I'm answering. And again, when I say I agree with Foodie, it's not like this is all laughable. But she's making a point. She's making it terribly, but she's making a point. Amberlynn did this as publicly as she could. And this is the result. And of course, Foodie's going to address it publicly. Foodie is not a private person. She doesn't function that way. I would ask though, and this is again and again, I ask this with Foodie and Nada all the time. I'm like, so why give her, Amberlynn, what she wants? If you know this is what Amber wants, why would you give her the satisfaction of doing it publicly? Because you know what would have killed Amber? If Foodie had just messaged her silently and said, hey, that wasn't okay, we're done. And never mentioned it. Because then Amber would be in a position where she'd either have to address the drama and look terrible for it and answer for what she did because Foodie hadn't reacted, or she just couldn't address the drama at all and it would all be wasted and she'd hate it. So I don't know why Foodie made the choices she made, because silence would have been a lot more powerful here for her. It would have done a lot more damage. Or privacy would have, at the very least. Someone asked, and she goes, how many friends does she have? Exactly. Burnt every bridge. And I'm like, careful, Foodie. You're never going to have meaningful relationships. They're always going to be surface relationships, and I feel bad for you. You're a pathological liar. This is what happens when you don't care about the feelings of other people, only to serve your own selfish needs. Oh, this is classic. You act like an impressionable teenager. You're not. You're 30. You need to grow up. Oh, God. She calls her opportunistic, and she says, that shit won't fly with me. I'm too smart for that. I recognize all those personality traits. Recognize them, but not in yourself? Chantal says she is self-aware, she loves people, and she's not self-serving. And I'm having trouble getting through the list with a straight face. And as proof of all these things, I wouldn't have a community supporting me if I weren't. You don't have a community supporting you, you fool. God. Well, the community you just blocked from talking because they were pissing you off, because they were holding you accountable. The community is so full of haters that any gift sub in your chat causes carnage. That community, are you crazy? God almighty, how she got through this with a straight face, I just don't know. I know we use the word delusion, but come on. So anyone, just knocking at the door. Anyone in there? Foodie, help us. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's all I've really got to say about it. Just absolutely blind to her own actions. And you know what they say, narcissists can't recognize themselves as being narcissists. So do with that information what you will. Like, oh my God. So that's where we are. I've literally got nothing else to say. Foodie has said it all. So I'm going to leave you there. Thank you so much for being here. I will check out her next live at some point. It won't be tonight. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.